Welcome to the Dr. Donna podcast, here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Innovative, evidence-based recovery that helps to identify intergenerational trauma, allowing for freedom and embracement of the healing process. Today, episode 121, As Far as You Can Go Before You Have to Come Back, Part 3, with special guest, Alle. And now your host, Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee.
And I'm Dr. Donna. Welcome to my podcast. Today, I have Alle with me again. I'm so pleased that she was willing to come back and talk to us again. I asked her, well, she's the author of a book, As Far as You Can Go Before You Have to Come Back. And, it's received a lot of acclaim. I'm really happy for her. It sounds like it took some time to get to the place where you could write the book. And so today, what I asked her to do was to put on her thinking cap and, share with us what her recovery was like and where she got to the place in the recovery. And whether it's her own, whether it's Carly's recovery, whoever's recovery it was, where it got to the place where I could write a book about this and hopefully maybe, help someone else. Was that part of it, Alle?
Nope.
Okay, well,
Donna,
let's hear it then.
Once Donna said to me in session, because I was like, I'm a mean person. I don't care about people. Something like this. And Donna said, you're just not a natural caretaker. I am not a natural caretaker. That came out once I had kids. I became very much a caretaker.
Yes.
But if I didn't know you and your children, I didn't particularly care. I still wasn't going to volunteer to babysit anybody. I'm not a natural caretaker. I'm purely a selfish artist. But each of us is here to bring something to the world. And this is what I get to bring to the world. I get to bring writing about healing from abuse and just exploring the different elements of what happens if you don't heal from abuse, which is what the next book is about. But this one, I would like to bring into the topic Tai Chi at this point, because Tai Chi was a huge part of my recovery and a huge part of Carly's recovery. And that I will claim as part of my history, which I gave to Carly because I can't explain what it feels like to do Tai Chi. It's just wonderful. It's kind of like I ended up feeling like I have seltzer water in my veins. There's just this really nice calming feeling, but it's very energetic. And doing that consistently, I had a Tai Chi practice for a couple years before I was able to really go, okay, I'm going to look at this. I'm really willing at this point now. I had to replace kind of the negative patterns I just had in me.
Which were
a general,
the negative patterns?
Right. The negative patterns, more to do with looking at the world than actual patterns I had. If that makes sense, it wasn't like I was living a pretty healthy life. Once I got into recovery, I was eating well. I was sleeping 8 hours a night. I practiced Tai Chi in the morning and the afternoon, but my expectations of life were negative. And one thing Tai Chi helped do, I think, was push that negative world that I had grown up with right up to the surface. The good being that I got to deal with it, the bad being I had to deal with it. It was right there. It was right there. And the Tai Chi gave me a spiritual sense that was grounded. I'm not what I call woo-woo around, I guess maybe because I lived in Asia. And so the whole Asia Buddhist, Tai Chi Taoist, yin yang signals with the circle with the swirl with the bright and the dark. None of that to me is frothy. It's all very real to me. I think because I lived there, but also practicing Tai Chi, my spirituality had legs, if that made sense. It wasn't ethereal. It wasn't intellectual. It was just something I got up in the morning, I did, and then something I did in the afternoon. And that it is a movement practice is for me really lovely. You get to do your exercise at the same time that you do your spiritual work, but you're moving. You're physically not like sitting there contemplating life. You're actually in it and doing things and moving. And it's air and it's earth and it's flowers and wind. It's sun. It's really lovely. So I put that in. I mean, when I thought of writing the book, it really just popped one day. I was filing at a job I had that consisted mostly of filing. I answered the phones and I filed. And boy, did I feel that I was better than that job. I really did. And I had to come around to like, well, I have this job for right now, so this is the job I will do. But one day I was not accepting that, and I was filing and I was thinking, I just wish I'd stolen a lot of money from my dad and run away when I was really young. And the whole boom, it just went like the whole opening of the whole first third of the book was there. And, I knew that the girl, Carly, was going to run away to Asia because I had just lived in Asia. It made no sense for her to run to Minneapolis or, St. Petersburg or someplace like this. Why choose a boring American city? She can go to Asia. So I had to figure out, well, how is this, 14-year-old going to figure out about Asia? So I had to figure all that out. But I knew at some point after a lot of messy travel involving alcohol and drugs and sleeping around that she was going to find Tai Chi. I just knew that was part of the story. And then I knew that the Tai Chi was going to ground her in a way that she could then come to terms with her history. And then she has to go back. And I'll let you read the book to figure out what that means, as far as you can go before you have to go back. But I will say that at the point that Carly starts practicing Tai Chi, each of the chapters is named after one of the Tai Chi. They're called postures, which is like that small movement. The form of the Tai Chi is made up of 89 postures or 127 postures. And so we have names like wave hands like clouds. And we have names like, there's one, sinking down is one, snakes creeps down is another. And they always found those names very evocative. Embrace tiger, return to mountain is one of my favorite. It's so romantic. Isn't that nice? So that's how the Tai Chi literally grounds itself in the novel.
Which, when we talk about recovery, it's like just about everybody in recovery, whether they're religious or not, right? It's like we'll say without some kind of spirituality, recovery from trauma is not possible.
It is not possible. And the other thing people always ask is, can I do this myself? When I say people, I mean the people I've interacted with. And my question to that has always been, why?
Why would you do it yourself?
Why would you do it yourself? I can understand wanting to do recovery without spirituality. I've just never found anybody who could. I was that person who said, I don't like God and I don't like the pronoun he associated with God as my first chair, and I still I don't use any pronoun for God. God to me is God. The other thing I wanted the book to be, even though I am a Jew and we practice Judaism in my house, we're not Orthodox, but we're definitely Jewish, but I wanted the spirituality in the book to be more open so that anybody could relate. So that if, you didn't have to be a Buddhist to pick it up. You didn't have to be a Taoist because it's about Tai Chi. You didn't have to be Christian. You didn't have to not be Christian. It could just be a good open spirituality, which is, it's basically my definition. It's just when I step into Jewish circles, I do the Jewish stuff. But in my own day-to-day stuff, I don't think about being Jewish or not being Jewish. Really.
Yeah. Well, in when I talk about spirituality, I talk about it in pretty esoteric terms. Like my spirituality is nature, right? Anybody can do that. Anybody can walk outside, take a walk, and notice. Even if you're in, a really hard place to live, you can look up at the sky, you can look at the clouds. It's like there's always something in nature. And to me, it's like that. But that's also spiritual grounding. It's like it doesn't have to be anything other than what's around you, right? But it's necessary when you recover from trauma. And that's what you're saying. It's like even your chapters have that spiritual base.
Yeah, they're standing on something spiritual. I think, people who are traumatized in context of family, and I was definitely this way about Judaism for a long time. I didn't want to be Jewish because my family was Jewish. My parents were Jewish and my parents were abusive. Therefore, by the theory of transitivity, Judaism is abusive, which doesn't make any sense. Some people do Judaism in an abusive way, but there are plenty of people who do it in a loving and open and caring way. Mm-hmm. And I've told my kids, like, I would love if you ended up partnering with a Jew and had a Jewish kid. But if that doesn't work out for you, that doesn't work out. I think what's important for people is to have a connection in some way. They both boldly told me at different times that they didn't believe in God, And I think they were a little disappointed that they didn't get a fight out of me. They were like in their early teens and very rebellious.
Well, that's why they say it then if they're in their early teens.
And I was
yeah.
So I think that's one thing that is totally up to a person.
Well, I think that's, it's like you were doing what you said. Your belief about parenting is that you're teaching them. And part of teaching them is helping them find their own way. And that goes for spirituality.
Absolutely. I mean, I would go so far as to say it comes down to spirituality. Mm-hmm. Spirituality. That's the critical part, and that the rest of it is what happens after the spiritual stuff is kind of settled. Like how you see yourself spiritually will extend into your job and who you choose to hang out with and the kind of place you want to live and how you value money and all of that. Because that's all an extension of your spiritual beliefs.
Mm-hmm. And so when you say that to your children, you're doing exactly what you said parents do. I'm just saying it's that.
Oh.
And it's a hard one, I think.
Yes.
It's a hard one to do, especially if you're in, it's like you're in a Jewish community. It's like so many people in a religious community really want their kids to be in that same religious community and will do whatever they can to keep them there, rather than saying, well, it's like, this is what you grew up with. This is what I do. Finding your own way is important. That's a hard one.
And I think it is. It's also kind of like, I felt, for the 10 years that they were both the youngest, about 10 to 12 years when they were both very, very young, I didn't even write for a lot of it. I couldn't figure out how to be the mom I wanted to be and also set aside the time that writing took. Mm-hmm. The emotional commitment it took to really work on a book. But I just thought, like, what is the point in having a book that's whatever, a New York Times bestseller, and they make a movie and it wins a Pulitzer and all this stuff, if your kids don't like you? There's no point in that. And I feel the same about organized faith. Mm-hmm. Like, what is the point of being like a good Jewish mother who has good Jewish kids and they do the good Jewish thing if your kids don't like you?
Yeah, like your mother-in-law, right?
Exactly. Like, if you don't she has a couple kids that don't like her very much. And that to me seems to be not worth it. Mm-hmm. I think, as long as they are good people and pursuing what they want to pursue in a healthy way, I think things like loving me and being some sort of spiritual person will evolve for them the way it needs to.
Yeah. Well, I've said many times on this podcast, people are probably a little tired of it, but, your children, when they're born, they love you unconditionally. They love you, right?
They do.
Your job is to earn it.
Oh, I don't think you've ever told me that before.
Well, you haven't been listening.
Maybe
What's
I
wrong
just
with
agreed,
you?
and so I didn't go, oh, that's interesting. Because you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Like I was saying before, a child's trust and their love is really a huge gift. And
Mhm.
to earn that takes a lot out of a person. It takes a real honesty in the way that we don't really allow ourselves to be with a lot of people.
Well, and it has to be unconditional for children.
It
And
does.
they, like you said before, it's like they just know when to fake.
Yes.
They'll
give you that look.
the look.
That look like they're like 80 years old going, who is this silly person trying to... Anyway.
So maybe you could share with our audience. So Carly, I know you said find out in the book, and that's fine. But maybe you could share with the audience, did she make it?
Well, I think you would have to be a much more depressed person than me to write a book where this character doesn't make it. Because that is just not me. I am the original glass half full kind of person. I am the original, I will go down trying. That's what I wanted to say on my tombstone. Here lies Alle C. Hall. She went down trying. Whatever I was trying at the last part of my life, I will go down trying to do it. So I'm not going to write something where Carly works and works and works and then lands on her face. What she comes to might not be what you expect.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't call it an ending with a happy little bow, because I'm also not that kind of person.
Right, yeah.
I am writing, the book I'm writing now is also a novel. It's a companion piece to this, as far as you can go before you have to come back. And it's about a young woman also backpacking in Asia, also from a traumatic background, but very different kind of trauma, who does not choose to move toward the light. She chooses to move toward the dark.
Oh.
And yeah, I still haven't decided how dark that ending is going to be. The dark I want, my editor is like, that's really dark. So, but I mean, when you choose the dark, you don't go happy places, like I remember this from treatment. Untreated trauma results in hospitalization, incarceration, or death.
Yep.
This is what you're looking at,
That's
right?
true.
So you got to get it together.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe I'll simply send this poor person to jail. No, I won't do that. But this, you can't see the cover, but there's a beautiful mountain, Mount Fuji's in the background, and then like a lake with a line of golden light across where the sun is hitting the lake. And that's what it is. You're heading for that line of beautiful golden light. So I also will say that if it gets intense as you're reading it, skip to page 80. Right, and page 80, it starts to get a little easier to actually read, because the overt trauma is over. Like, she's not re-traumatizing herself anymore.
Right.
She gets into the Tai Chi practice, and at that point, at least she's physically safe. So yeah.
So you would say to our listeners that there's some more discussion about the abuse in the first 80 chapters, or first 80 pages.
And then she's acting it out. She's acting out she hasn't found anything else to do. Those negative circles that I was talking about have not been replaced yet with the positive circles that Tai Chi bring to your life. So she's just living her old self in it. It's like she moved, but she took herself with her. So there she is. And then there are just some things that I wanted to set up in those pages that she had to go through in order to get to some of the ending experiences. So, but then when the Tai Chi comes in, she's much more safe emotionally as well as physically. So if you are reading it and finding this just difficult to read about what she's putting herself through, just skip to page 80.
Well, okay, I'll just, now you've told them, so they've been fully warned. And
Sure.
if it's too tough, just here's what you do. Um,
Yeah.
so you didn't write it to, to necessarily help other people in difficult, traumatic situations. But would you say that if a person has had childhood trauma and they read the book, that they might feel like, oh, maybe there's a way out of this?
Yes, definitely. And that, I mean, I think any writer would be an idiot if they say, I don't care how my reader is affected by this book. I got to the point with writing where I realized anything I'm trying to achieve with this book cannot be achieved by trying to achieve that. It can be achieved by telling this truest story. So in telling this truest story that I can, people will resonate with that. And then I got a letter, you get those blurbs for the backs of the books.
Mm-hmm.
And one came from these sisters in Ireland, the Kavanagh sisters, who run an organization called, Survivors Standing Together to Demand Change. It's a political organization.
Mm-hmm.
And they wrote me a note, and the first sentence of it said, Alle Hall may never know how many people she will help with this novel. And it hit me like, wow, I could help people.
Uh-huh.
And then they talk about their whole thing is legal, like get child abuse out there as a crime that people can be held accountable for. And they talk about how I forget what they said exactly. I should have this in front of me and read this, but I don't. So I'll just say, Alle describes how this crime affects survivors, and so that they think they are the problem and they are just bad. And when I read that word crime,
Mm-hmm.
I swear I felt like I'd been hit. Again, I tapped my chest, but it's like because I was doing so much of my healing work in the late 80s and early 90s, there was no Me Too movement. There was no believing you if you
No.
took your perpetrator to court. You had to have empirical evidence of crimes that happened, 15 years ago when you were 5.
Yeah,
Like
right.
you were not going to bring these people to justice.
Right.
They were that was not going to happen. So I just gave up on that as any way of fulfilling my own recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned inward with it. Like, this is going to be something I do for myself. And it kind of completely escaped my attention that child abuse is a crime. It's a
No
crime.
kidding, it is.
It is a crime to hurt children. It's a crime to hurt people, and children are people. And now with the way the Me Too movement has affected the United States, I mean, people are going to jail for these crimes, and people are getting fired from very important jobs for these crimes.
Right.
And if there is anything I can do now to be a part of that, I would. I would love to do that. As long as it didn't put my kids at risk, which is like my bottom line for everything. It doesn't put my kids at risk, I would probably do, so
Sure.
I would love to, now that I've written the book that I wanted to write without any agenda,
Mm-hmm.
except to tell the story, now that the story exists as a book, I would love to somehow partner with a nonprofit or, speak at different places talking about what it's like to be a survivor and to really come into thriving, not just be a victim, but be beyond just surviving and actually thriving.
Mm-hmm.
So if anybody knows anything like that and you want to get in touch with Donna, she can get in touch with me.
I
Because
can.
it seems to me that, I'm still am in touch. I think it's really important to stay in touch with those roots of surviving, even though, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I find myself in a remarkably good position in my life. I still am part of a child trauma survivor group. And to see the people when they first come in and just the sheer desperation, the sheer just like, I can't do this. I'm at my wit's end. And to see them slowly get their sea legs, and come around, and then to be able to start reaching out to other people with helpful things to say and to, and then to move into thriving. It's an amazing thing to see. And I want it to happen, not just at a personal level for middle and upper middle class white people. I would love to see it
Right.
in nations, like where
Yes.
rape is used as a tactic of war,
Yes, a weapon
and
of
to be
war.
able to get those survivors to get into a
Sure.
place of thriving too. I don't know if that's my part in this.
Uh-huh.
All I can do is be open and willing.
Right. Well, in fact, I think about like what you're saying now is the Me Too movement, and all of that and what happens because of all the awareness. I mean, when I look up, surviving childhood trauma, for a book and surviving, it's like huge. There's all kinds of books being written about it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you couldn't find a book like that in the 70s if you were, in the Library of Congress. It wasn't there. And
It didn't
so,
exist.
but one of the things that happened when rape crisis centers began to occur, and I know this because I started one back in the 70s, is that over time, it really does impact society. If you think about, when I first started, rape crisis center, it was like crimes, sexual assault was forced sexual intercourse by a man on a woman, not his wife. Right?
Right. In
That
some
was
weird,
it.
pulled into an alley kind of way.
Yeah. And so
It
that
didn't
was
happen
what it
in
was.
marriages, didn't happen in families.
Wow. Move that forward a few, decades. And now, like, we're training police officers how to be sensitive to sexual assault victims so that they don't feel re-traumatized by that experience working with police officers. That wasn't even a thing, a thought.
It was not a
right?
thing.
And so I think that, your willingness to write this book, to, put yourself out there and say, I'm willing to be part of this, get well, get in recovery. Don't be a victim, be a thriver, right? It's like you're willing to helping to do that. We don't know where that's going to take us, but I can pretty much tell you it will be better.
It will be better. And as someone who's like age-wise somewhere between the second and the third wave of feminism,
Mm-hmm.
we owe so much to the women of your generation, Donna. I mean, I owe so much to you personally for having been my therapist and for really, like I say in the intro to the book, thank you for Donna for saving my life and then showing me how to live it. I mean that.
Thank
But
you.
all the women of your generation who founded rape crisis centers, who, got into law things about domestic violence and about how a woman in a marriage can say no to sex and then that would be rape. We would not be anywhere if you bold people in the 70s hadn't stood up and just done that, despite the fact that the patriarchy had no interest, none whatsoever at that point.
Actively against us.
Actively against you. Now I see plenty of men who I count as my allies,
Sure.
straight men.
Mm-hmm.
Straight white men who have everything to lose
Right.
by women gaining power, give it up willingly to share that power so that they can experience what that means to be on par with people.
Sure.
And we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. You're the women of your generation. We just wouldn't.
Well, thank you, Alle, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I really, really do appreciate it. It's been an honor.
And everyone should go out and get this book, As Far as You Can Go Before You Have to Come Back by Alle Hall. You'll be glad you did.
Thank you for listening to the Dr. Donna podcast here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible because of listeners just like you. If you would like to support the channel with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. The Dr. Donna podcast is copyright 2023 Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.
Hey friends, Sean here, your Experience of the Soul producer. I want to take a moment to tell you about something truly exciting. The SoulWorks online community, created by your host, Cynthia Alice Anderson, and available on the Mighty Networks app. If you're looking for a place where you can explore your spiritual path, connect with others, and grow in a meaningful way, then this is for you. SoulWorks is so much more than an online community. It's a safe, inclusive space for spiritual exploration, self-discovery, and personal transformation. Inside the community, you'll find everything from uplifting spiritual studies to soul-centered growth practices, meditations, affirmations, and so much more. It's a space where you'll always be supported and never judged. The best part, membership is free. You'll have access to powerful resources, inspiring content, and a supportive group of like-minded people who are all on their own unique spiritual journeys. And if you're ready to dive deeper, there are premium options available to enhance your experience with a live Monday night talk series and extended, deeper meditations. If you're seeking a place to connect, grow, and nurture your soul, we would love to have you join us in the SoulWorks community and see where this journey can take you. Visit my.soulworkscommunity.com today.